This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. It's been a while since I've had the homie Cam Justice on. Cam, how have you been? You know, let's just check in on you on a human level. You know, how's everything been down there in Cam Justice world? I know you've been covering the Cavs. You've been all over the local circuit. I'm pretty sure every time people turn on News 5, they see you. So how's things been with you?
What do they say? Booked and busy, busy and booked. There's not an off season for me. So yeah, a lot of Cavs, doing some Guardians, some high school, some college sports. So never really a break, but there's also really never a break when it comes to football season anyway. Even if I wasn't doing those, the Browns have been busy. When it's the combine, and then it's the draft, and then it's OTAs and rookie minicamp, and then it's minicamp, and then it's training camp. And so I feel like the offseason gets shorter and shorter every single year. What's a break? Who knows what that is? Not me.
Look, everybody in Cleveland would be happy if if Cleveland got like a W team or a MLS team, except for Cam. That's my off season. The MLS goes on the entire off season.
Throw it on the plate. I'm here. Listen, I'm here. Bring the Rockers back. Let's get a professional soccer team in here for sure. As much as that would mean more work for me, I am not mad at that. I wouldn't be opposed. Nothing wrong with more sports in Cleveland.
It would definitely be fun for sure if you add more things to that summer pile of sports. But let's talk about what's going on right now with the Cleveland Browns. They're getting ready for mandatory camp right now. You've been able to see a little bit of a glimpse of the new offensive coaches in there, right? And I want to make sure I don't just focus on like Ken Dorsey, because they brought in a bunch of new offensive guys. What's your impression of that new staff, and like, what do you feel like they bring to the table that's different than who they came in and kind of replaced?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more on this side. I think there's a lot more fire and edge to the offensive staff. And listen, we'll talk about Ken Dorsey. I think Ken Dorsey he's pretty mild-mannered. He's kind of quiet, but you could hear him out there. You can see that he's a presence. And we've seen that he can get very fired up. And so, knowing that is what he is able to bring, I think that in itself lends to a totally different approach to the offense. We saw it work really well on the other side of the ball with Jim Schwartz and how he implements that fire, the feistiness, the badassery, the swag. And so I think if you have something, maybe not the same, because you can't replicate what Jim Schwartz does. Jim Schwartz is really, truly, I think, one of one. But if you can replicate some of that energy that the defense was able to feed off of, that made them so successful last season on the offense, I think that it bodes really well for what this offense could do. And I think it also bodes well to a sense of leadership and establishing that within this offense. I think last year there was obviously question marks with all the injuries with Deshaun Watson and the carousel of quarterbacks that came in and that followed suit. And then still at the same time trying to, get the most out of Elijah Moore while he had that really good connection with Deshaun. And then you've got to figure it out with other quarterbacks and kind of where he plays into the offense, figuring out the run game after you lose Nick Chubb and how you want to navigate that without him there. There are so many question marks. And I think what this offensive staff, to me, early on indicates is that there's a lot of organization, there's a lot of planning, and there's a lot of intentionality behind all of what's going to happen. And so I think, to me, that is what was missing. And it wasn't necessarily the Browns offensive staff's fault last season. It was just kind of a chaotic season. So knowing that and learning that lesson from last year, I think will help. But I do think that there is a lot of emphasis being put on a plan and leadership and just kind of really figuring out what guys should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, playing to strengths, and having a really good game plan going into week one. And it starts in OTAs.
I always wonder about moves like the one that they made in the offseason with Alex Mappel, because like the move they made from Joe Woods, it was pretty unanimous if you did like a vote with the defensive players. It was time. People weren't necessarily going to stand up against a change, right? And I don't think anybody on the offensive side feels like they're going to like revolt because the Browns changed offensive coordinators. But the thing with Alex Van Pelt was that that offense did work really well for some people, right? Like that offense is kind of what got Wyatt Teller's career going, right? Him working with Bill Callahan. Have you seen like any kind of adjustment period with some of those vets who really did thrive with what the Browns focused on with Alex Van Pelt, and now they're going to be asked to do something that might be a little bit different here with Ken Dorsey? Like I think Wyatt Teller comes to mind as somebody who's like pull, kick, drag, just kick ass in the run game and get out in space. He's not going to be asked to do that as much. These guys who are going to have new roles that have had a role on this offense for a while. How do you feel like they're adjusting to, the kind of the uncertainty of not knowing what the true identity of this team's going to be when they've had one?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be that's going to be a wait and see thing. It's really hard to tell right now because there's not enough going on with, especially when you think of the offensive linemen. There's not enough activity for them. You the 7-on-7, 11-on-11s, but it's real light. There's no pads, there's no tackling right now. So to kind of see how that plays out I think maybe too early to see how they adjust to that. But what I do think is that they have had so many of these guys are veterans, right? Like Joel Bitonio's a veteran before Bill Callahan, and Wyatt Teller Bill Callahan helped him take a really big leap. But I think the lessons that Bill Callahan imparted on these guys that are still here is something that they can carry on with them, and they can implement some of that. They can have conversations. A lot of them have connections with Andy Dickerson, right? Like they know him, and they have confidence in him and what he's going to be able to do. But I think having that relationship allows them to say like, hey, this worked really well with Bill Callahan, not to take away from what Andy Dickerson wants to do and what Ken Dorsey wants to do with the offense, but to be able to kind of share like, this works really well for our group. How can we maybe play around with it with what you want to install and find some like middle ground, a happy medium? I think there's a nice ability to collaborate and to make really good decisions there. And I do think there's so much respect within some of these new coaches, like Deuce Staley, right? These players respect him so much, and you can hear it and you can see it in them. He's getting the question from earlier about kind of the difference in staffing. It's Deuce Staley's out there. He's yelling at guys. He's making them compete. Now, Stump Mitchell was a tough guy, right? But like Deuce Staley brings a kind of new, refreshed energy. He's got guys out there competing. He's loud. He's vocal. You can hear
It's
him.
like that Hard Knocks clip he had from when he was in Detroit, right? Where he's like screaming at Terry. Was it Glenn? Yeah, like
that's exactly it. And you're seeing every day you hear that from like, if there's one area of the field that you cannot not hear, no matter where you're at, it's the running back section, wherever they're doing their drills, you hear him. And so I do think that what they were able to find success with on the offense doesn't go away. There's plenty of people who learned that and know that. And a lot of these systems are very similar. They just kind of share pieces and parts, tweak pieces and parts. So to have guys who have thrived under what they were able to do before is key. They didn't turn over the team, the roster. They've got a lot of returning guys on the offense. And I think that on top of having the same head coach and the continuity there, that allows for collaboration to, yes, we're going to have a revamped, refreshed offense, but not everything's going to be different. It's not throwing everything out. It's just tweaking things and adding in some new ideas and some new thoughts on how to get the most out of these guys. I think it's a really good thing that what they did. And the idea is what they were able to do on defense, which is kind of a whole different ballgame. Kind of threw out their ideas, but like in this sense, like it's a new face, it's a new voice, new set of eyes on the offense that can really help tweak what was working well from before.
Yeah, one of the things with the switch around with the offense and all the kind of uncertainty that we've had this offseason, I think Nick Chubb becomes a big point of question. And it's funny to me, every year people assume like the Browns are going to stop running the ball. Like even when Baker was here, it's like, oh, we're going to stop running the ball. We're going to do this. But every year, Kevin seems to be pretty like hell bent on 500 rushing attempts, 500 passing attempts, right? Like he really likes it balanced. Like he's had 5 different quarterbacks and like 8 different running backs last year. Still had that even ratio. So when I look at Nick Chubb, when you see like, he did a media availability for the first time in almost like a year, where do you feel like he feels he is? And like, is there is this a situation where like Nick Chubb might be like, hey, I might be ready by August, where the team's like, we might not want that, right? Like, do you feel like there's going to be a friction there between those two, as far as like what that timetable looks like, or do you think Nick Chubb, like, what's your basic gauge on what this Nick Chubb situation is looking like?
Yeah, I think Nick Chubb is a hard worker, right? So he is putting everything into getting back and rehabbing and getting to the field. That's his one goal right now. He's laser focused on it. I do think that he has a very good grasp of what he is doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just, yes, I have to rehab to get back on the field, but I have to rehab a knee injury that I have already gone through. I've already done this, and I was a lot younger when it happened. So I don't think that he's going to be, there's not going to be a situation where he's like, I'm ready to go week one, and the Browns are like, no, you're not doing it. And there's any tension there. I think, if anything, if Nick Chubb said, I'm ready to go week one, it's because he's actually ready to go week one, and the Browns
Mm-hmm.
would know that. If it's like, oh, you might need a couple weeks, I think Nick Chubb wouldn't be like, yeah, he's not rushing anything, because he knows that's not what gets you a full recovery. That's not what gets you to 100%. You need to go through the entire rehab process. You need to make sure your knee and your leg, everything is strengthened, and that you aren't going to risk re-injury or any setbacks. You want to be able to go full force and be
Mm-hmm.
the best player that you can be. And that's Nick Chubb is a very, very smart player, in the sense of he knows what works for him. He knows what works best for the team. And he is not a guy that's a me guy at all. He wants the ball, but he's never going to say, like, give me the ball more. He's never going to say, let's do this instead. He knows what he needs to do when he's asked. And so to me, I think that when you see Nick Chubb on the field, it's because he is 100% ready, in his own opinion and in the team's opinion. And it's a shared mutual decision. And that decision is not going to be, for the benefit of a particular matchup, a particular game, or just to see Nick Chubb on the field. It will be for the benefit of Nick Chubb, and therefore then the team. No one's going to risk doing anything reckless with him. He's worked way too hard for that. He's too good of a player. He means too much to the, not just the organization, but the franchise, the fan base, everybody involved in this. And so I think it'll be smart decisions, and there's no reason to rush him. We all want to see Nick Chubb back on the field. We all want to make sure that Nick Chubb can stay on the field from the moment he gets in until the day he's done playing football.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. I think that's where it stands. And I think that they've done a really good job so far of managing his rehab schedule. And he looks good. He's walking around, he's running. He said he was squatting. Like, he is making
Oh, he's
huge.
squatting.
He said he was some squatting. Yeah.
That's
So
really good.
so these are the things that I'm saying. Like, he's making really good progress, and they're doing it in really good time. So let's not rush it. It's the same thing. Any injury, let's not rush an injury. There's no reason to do it. Let him go through some things. Let him figure it out. If it's week 1 or if it's week 10, does not matter to me. Nick Chubb healthy for the remainder of his career is what we're looking for. And Nick Chubb healthy whenever that comes in for the remainder of the season is what helps the Browns continue to get wins.
And like recovery from an ACL, like I feel like we as fans or we as people around football like tend to like just think it's magic how people recover from it. It was like you have the surgery, the muscle heals, and then you have to like work on making sure it's flexible and that you can stretch it and stress it. And then once you get to that point, it's about adding strength back on there. Like it's technically healed, but you need to make sure you're as strong as you were previously or close to it before you can get back out there and go on athlete, because you don't want any like imbalances, right, that end up stressing the other knee that could cause a ACL tear on the other knee if you kind of rush that process. And that's why I'm like, Nick Chubb works out as hard as he works out. He's probably one of those people who are in a high likelihood of being able to be at the faster end of a recovery, just because it's not like I think his body's different. It's just he has a different mentality about this, and his body does react differently to, weightlifting, and it's more reactive to that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's just I think that's why I'm more optimistic on it. Talk about optimism. Jerry Jeudy went from a situation to where he got a pretty like normal contract, and everybody from his old place like got mad at him, like Denver gave him that contract, and that's what I was like, wow. he was in a really bad spot there in Denver. Like they really did not like him. Like in it, I get how it happens. Like you make a bad impression, you double down. Now you can't go back. Now it becomes a thing, and now you have to, and it just becomes like a horrible place for you to be in. And I think that's what Denver was. How is Jerry like enjoying being in Cleveland? The new coaching staff, just the fresh start that he gets here, where he's not Jerry Jeudy, the 15th pick in the draft, where Justin Jefferson went behind him. He's just Jerry Jeudy, dude. We traded a 6th-round pick for.
So I think so he hasn't been there a ton. He was there early on. And listen, for me, I am not the person that's ever going to judge anybody for not being at voluntary OTAs because that's why they're voluntary. And as long as you're a professional and you are working, you're not sitting on the couch eating a pack of Oreos and like not watching anything related to film or your playbook. I don't care what
And
you're
like
doing.
the coaches are in the loop, right? Like
Yes.
that's the one thing is like if they know, hey, he has this thing, he's going to be doing this thing that week. That is very normal for
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
sports activity, right?
They're
Like I
not
think people like unexplained absence is the only time we should be
exactly.
like, hey, that's not right.
Where are you at?
During OTAs, yeah.
Yes. And so they are all everybody's on the same page with all of these guys. Like everyone knows where Myles Garrett's at. Everyone knows where Dustin Hopkins is at. They're not at the facilities. That doesn't mean that they're not working. And so Jerry Jeudy, I think, is in a similar boat. I am excited to see how he continues to fit in from early on. I think that he has a lot of potential to be very happy here in Cleveland. He's got a support system of players that he played against and like played around from his hometown. Like they're like Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and Jerry Jeudy are within like an hour from each other. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
like to have like a group, your wide receiver group that is like just like already has those ties. I think already sets you up for the potential to just have the connections off the field and to have people that you can like lean on. And yes, they'll help each other competitively and then push each other because there's that going to be that competition for who's going to have the ball the most. But I think in this scenario, having that prior connection, having that background can help ensure that things don't turn toxic. And I think that's what was missing for him in Denver. I think that things got toxic for him quickly, not just within the team, but like the fan base too. They were like really, really out on him. And in Cleveland, there is always that potential, right? But I think the idea of a fresh start and being able to get the most out of a player is really enticing for the fan base to see and maybe have a little bit more patience, right? We know that things didn't necessarily go the way that we thought they would for a first round pick and what he seemed to have, the caliber of talent that he seems to have, you would expect bigger and better results in Denver. Browns fans now have seen what happened in Denver and they know, okay, that was his season then. That was his couple seasons in Denver. That's the baseline. Now, anything better than that is positive in the eyes of Browns fans. And I think that you have the potential to do that with this revamped offense, with a healthy Deshaun Watson, and with a core of receivers that can help get the most out of you. And so I think Jerry Jeudy could be very happy here. The Browns have made it clear that they wanted him. He now can feel wanted. He can feel that he is appreciated in Cleveland. Andrew Berry had been eyeing him for years, and they finally got him. So Jerry Jeudy now knows just how much there was a push to get him here. And I think that goes a long way too with the player. So mentally, I think that he should be in a really good place because all of the intangible things that don't happen with the ball in your hand on the field in a positive way are happening for Jerry Jeudy here in Cleveland. Now it's okay. The next step of him being truly happy in Cleveland is having a really productive year. And I think that it bodes well that Deshaun Watson is coming back from that injury with we all are just waiting for it, a full season of health. And then you've got just a really big focus on the offense and making sure that it's good with all of the offseason moves, the additions to the coaching staff, and this new revamp of the playbook with the collaboration of Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey. So I think that there is a lot of promise for Jerry Jeudy to have a much better fit in Cleveland than he did in Denver. Now we just wait and see how that plays out. But early on, he was out there. He was getting some good looks. Amari wasn't there either. So we'll see how that plays out too. Once
Mhm.
mini camp ramps up and training camp gets there, and you start seeing kind of the first team reps and who's getting what. So remains to be seen, but a lot of promise there for him.
Probably has a lot to do with Deshaun not being able to throw during OTAs, right? Like if he's not out there, with the usefulness of those reps start to diminish a little bit. Also, want to point out, no place somebody from the South could feel more comfortable than in the Cleveland Browns locker room right now. That locker room is country.
It's
Okay,
country.
they got all kind of folk in there from the South. But let's talk about Deshaun Watson, because I thought it was interesting from him that he came back with like new gear, right? Like came back wearing like a headband
And
and
yeah.
a visor. And I'm like, usually when athletes do stuff like that, they're trying to signal something. And I'm just trying to get a read on like, what is he trying to signal? Like, is this like a new style of play for him? Like, is he kind of like been big on this being a new era for him? Like, what do you think is going on there with Deshaun? Because he seems very confident in what he's going to be able to do this year.
This is like headband LeBron. We like did two different players. Like, whoa, hold on a minute.
Like when
I'm sorry.
LeBron grew his hair back.
Well, I'm sorry, you're wearing what? No, I do. I mean, I do think that he's confident, and there's good reason for it because I mean, last year, early on, right? You saw a little bit of struggles, and we're talking about like, is there rust? Is there like, and the word rust got really old really quickly. But you
Mm-hmm.
saw moments, and we've talked about these moments that you see from Deshaun Watson. He just has to put them together. You think of the I think the Titans game to me was like that's the one we always talk about, right? He had a really good game, and you're like, that's Deshaun Watson. The fact that he's been able to put these things together and kind of highlight who he can be as a quarterback, like, yeah, I can get back to this guy, just needs to do it consistently. That is enough reason, I think, to be confident because right now, especially in his mind, the big problem from last year was that he was injured for most of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get hurt that early on, and then you try to play a couple games, it doesn't work out super well. There you have some moments again, but you're still dealing with that to be able to say, okay, the first season with this team, I was suspended and I hadn't played for a very long time before that. The second season, I was hurt for most of the year, but I've shown glimpses and I can see how this works. And so mentally, you've got to think when he's feeling good about his rehab and he's feeling good about how he is, progressing through the work to get back from that shoulder injury, he's got to feel confident in the fact that he's still has those moments. He just needs to be healthy and he just needs to be available. And so if you put those two things together and you can string a season together, a couple bad throws here and there isn't going to deter you. It shouldn't deter you.
Mm-hmm.
A tough first game, you got to be able to bounce it. Mentally, you've got to be able to bounce back from that and get through it. And I think that he showed last season, okay, not a great first game. And then, so how do we go from here? And you kind of move through, and he was able to erase some of the bad passes, the interceptions, whatever, and put together a good outing. To me, that indicates that he has the potential to do that. He's got the ability to do that. Now we just need to see it in 2024, and he's got to stay healthy, and he's got to be able to be available for the Browns because one moment here and one moment there does not make a good season.
Yeah.
It is a full healthy season of those moments that we've seen from him. But and having the ability to do that, like with a full season, I think too, that point being said, when you start to put that together and you can stay healthy, okay, I had one really good game. Let's do it again. All right, let's do it again, and let's do it even better. And then I think you can go grow from that. But it's hard to build any momentum when you are knocked down with injury, and so health to me is the number one factor here. The 2024 season for Deshaun.
Yeah, and one thing I want to see with Deshaun this last year was like, with this during this offseason, was him demonstrate like understanding the need to evolve, right? Because I think part of what's been going on is he tried to come back from that hiatus and be old Deshaun Watson, right? In a new offense, in a new team, with new teammates, He was like, "Nah, I'm gonna just do that old thing," and that didn't translate as well because all the cover two that teams are playing, all the too high stuff, all those changes. So it's been encouraging to hear him talk about, oh yeah, I do need to be more of a game manager. I do need to take care of the ball and sometimes like sacrifice we talked about it. It seems like he's trying to win back his reputation on one throw every time he's out there sometimes. And it's like just him understanding what his situation is. And I feel like when you hear him talk about it, and you tell me if you get this feeling, he saw how the Chiefs beat the Ravens and then saw that that's the exact same thing that he did. And he was like, oh, I can do this. Like, I think that's what it was like, because he was talking about that game, and I was like, he was like, oh, yeah, they just did the same thing that we did, where we just took what they gave us, and it's like, and it clicked to him, I think, while watching that, it's like, oh, we can win games with just me doing this. Like, I don't have to make the big play, and that can be, that got Pat to a Super Bowl, and it's encouraging seeing that, because I talked about this last year. There are guys like Carson Wentz who, the second the physical starts to break down, and they can't have that wild style of play anymore, they fall off, right? Even with somebody like Cam, who was as good as it as anybody, he wasn't really good past 28, 29 years old, right? And then there are the guys who have that reckless style of play, like a Brett Favre, who adjust, or Ben Roethlisberger, who used to be real reckless with his body. Adjust, figure it out, play a long career. And hopefully this is a sign of like him understanding he needs to reinvent himself for what he needs to be for this team. And that means being a different quarterback than maybe what he was to be in Houston. Like, I don't think he's trying to go out there and be 2020 Deshaun. I think he's going to try to be something different, which is going to look a little different.
I think what also will help with that, I think you're spot on there. And I think that is the evolution of any NFL quarterback, is figuring out what works in any given matchup, and then as your career continues. And I think what will help with that a lot is bringing in Jameis Winston to back him up. I think Jameis Winston has himself seen kind of the evolution of roles, and whether it's a single season or just from the start of his career. I think that he's done an excellent job of figuring himself out and learning how he needs to be used and how he can value a team in whatever role, in whatever moment. And to have him there, and Jameis as a person is very, very respected and likable within, the player circles, because he's very well spoken. He says what he means and he cares. And there's like an authenticity about that when he's talking to his teammates, and you can tell that he's so well liked within the teams that he's on. People rally around it. He can be goofy, he can be funny, but he can be serious, and he can be that kind of leader. And so to have him there behind Deshaun Watson to kind of say, hey, look, you can be yourself. This is who you can be as a person. Show your personality. Get guys behind you, but also like your role today might not be the same role that you have next week. It might not look the same, but if you're able to adapt and use that to your advantage, right? To learn from it and play off of it, that benefits the team, which in turn benefits you. And so to have Jameis Winston, I think that was a huge pickup for the Browns. I think he's the perfect player to come in behind Deshaun Watson. It's very catered to Deshaun, the quarterback. I think that was a really, really smart move by the Browns organization. And I'm excited to see how that helps Deshaun Watson grow, because he's already, I think, taken a lot of steps on his own. And I mean, as much as people were like, there's tension between like him and Joe Flacco, I think Joe Flacco really did help. They had a lot of conversations too. They had really good moments on the sidelines when Deshaun wasn't able to play, and you could see them talking. I think that wasn't really good. That was a really good step for Deshaun last year. I think this takes another step in the right direction for growing Deshaun as your franchise quarterback, while also still allowing yourself to have a reliable backup and a good presence in addition to Deshaun Watson in the locker room. I think guys have the potential to rally around them both.
The last thing I'll say, because we got to head out, Jameis is an excellent football mind. Like, this is somebody who like could and will become a coach once he retires. Like, I think that people forget that Florida State Jameis, like all the like eating W's antics. Like Jameis was a football savant coming out of Florida State, and he was always considered to be a high level processor of the game. He's just a risk taker, right? Which ultimately makes him not somebody you want to rely on for like multiple seasons, but he is somebody who that mind for football, right? And you talk about Deshaun has a really excellent mind for football. You have Amari Cooper. Like that's also something I think that they wanted to add is like, hey, Jameis Winston has a lot to offer when it comes to, hey, they're doing this to you, right? You should be able to adjust by doing that. Like it's kind of like that Josh Dobbs value, but he does that. Like he is a football savant. And I think that part is like, I'm interested to see when he finally like gets him mic'd up as like a backup quarterback because like it's Jameis, we gonna do it. But like they're gonna mic him up and it's gonna be funny. Realize having these people like go like, oh wow, Jameis is like really getting in there with the X's and O's on that board with them. I'm like, yeah, that's why Jameis is here. Like the reason Jameis has been able to survive in the NFL as a backup quarterback, given the cachet that he has when backups usually don't last that long when they have as big as a name as Jameis, is he is a like considered to be a football genius. And you know, some football geniuses can't apply it on the field as consistently, and that's been Jameis's issue. But when you on the sideline and you helping out Deshaun, try to figure out what's going on, like that's a excellent resource to have. It's almost like having another quarterback coach in the room. And I'm sure we'll get those quotes once camp starts or once the season starts. Oh yeah, Jameis is like, we'll get those quotes, but it's always hilarious. Like people get focused on some of the other stuff with Jameis and because Jameis is hilarious, but don't underestimate this man is here because he is really, really good at this whole like understanding X's and O's things. And I wouldn't be surprised if like you hear Kev talk about how he bounces stuff off of like Jameis and how Jameis and him go back and forth to try to figure out some stuff. This dude knows what he's talking about when it comes to that position. And it's just weird. Ain't it weird seeing Jameis be an old head to Deshaun Watson?
I know, and he's like, no, he said he's like he's like motivating him, he's mentoring him, and I'm like,
he's like, I gotta help the young fella. I'm like, Jameis, you were drafted in 2013. He was drafted like what? Well, no, Jameis was a 2015 draft.
Is it 2015?
Yeah, like and Deshaun was what 2017. But like Jameis is like 35 in his mind. Which
I think in his mind he might be 45. We were trying to figure this out. So Jameis's personality is so funny to try to explain because he's funny even when he's not maybe necessarily trying to be. Like there's just like a humor about him.
He's one of those people that are hilarious because he's dead serious.
Yes. And it's the energy is like he's got like a positive energy about him, but it's not even like a rah energies all the time. So I related it to what I think that he is the equivalent of is like a youth group leader, like a youth church pastor. Like he's like that guy.
He's your favorite gym teacher. Yeah, that's what he is. Like he gonna get that information to you in a way that like you can really understand it because he explained how the ankle bone worked, but you might not get that right if you explain it by the textbook. But James is gonna be like, it worked just like your wrist. Your wrist is your ankles.
And you walk away from the conversation, you're like, I love this.
Like, oh,
I get it. Like, how much fun was that?
Well, yeah, Jameis is hilarious, but also I don't want people to forget Jameis Winston does bring a lot to the table as far as like that backup. He's not just there to sit down and like be passive all season. He's gonna be there to really get some work in and help Deshaun get better. And I think that's gonna be a perfect person to help him because not only is there less of an age gap between the two, but like anybody who Deshaun's like our age, right? We know about Jameis, right? Like we know what Jameis did to get that number 1 overall selection. Like, you know, there's respect there for Jameis of people in our age group. So it's gonna be interesting to see. Cam, where else can they find you?
At Cami Justice on all the socials. News5cleveland.com is where my stories are and my videos live. Check it out. There's a lot. Not just Browns.
We need you to get that Jose interview and then follow it up with the Jameis interview.
We got some good stuff coming. Listen, we got some good exclusive sit downs and some new segments this season. that are coming that'll be really fun, and I can't wait for people to see them because
Before you know it, too, you're gonna get caught. Hey, they hired the coach. Cats hired the coach. You gotta go to that too. Well, all right, Cam. Thank you for coming on. Everybody else, y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.